That piece of barramundi in your shopping trolley right now, the one you're planning to grill for dinner tonight, might be carrying more than just omega-3s. Behind the pristine displays and cheerful seafood counter staff at some of Australia's biggest grocery chains, there's a murky reality most shoppers never see. What looks fresh might be days old. What smells fine could be crawling with bacteria. And what you think is wild-caught Australian seafood might actually be imported frozen fillets from farms you'd never want to know about. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to expose exactly which 5 Australian grocery stores are selling you fish that shouldn't be anywhere near your plate. From temperature violations to mislabeling scandals, from contamination cover-ups to outright deception, what you're about to discover will change how you shop forever. By the end of this investigation, you'll know exactly which stores to avoid and what warning signs to watch for. Let's pull back the curtain on Australia's seafood industry. Because some of these stores are serving danger on ice and millions of Australians have no idea. Number 5. Coles. Australia's second largest supermarket chain has built its reputation on fresh quality and Australian heritage. The red hand logo, the down jingle, the promise of supporting Aussie farmers. It all feels trustworthy, right? Except when it comes to their seafood department, that trust is seriously misplaced. Let's start with what Food Standards Australia discovered in 2021. Multiple Coles stores across New South Wales and Victoria were cited for temperature control failures in their seafood sections. Inspectors found fish displays running between 5 and 8 degrees Celsius, when they should never exceed 4 degrees. That might sound like splitting hairs, but for raw seafood, those extra degrees are the difference between safe consumption and bacterial breeding grounds. One microbiologist compared it to leaving sushi on your kitchen bench on a summer day. You wouldn't do that at home, so why are you paying premium prices for it at Coles? The real problem is consistency. Some Coles stores maintain excellent seafood standards with proper refrigeration, regular ice replenishment, and trained staff. Others treat the fish counter like an afterthought. Former employees have revealed that during busy periods, seafood often sits out for extended periods during restocking. One Queensland worker admitted that prawns would sometimes sit in the back room for 20 to 30 minutes before making it to the display. That's enough time for bacterial colonies to multiply exponentially. And here's what really bothers informed consumers. Coles sources significant portions of its seafood from overseas suppliers, particularly for popular species like salmon, prawns, and basa. The packaging says, "Product of Australia," when the fish was merely packaged here, not caught or farmed locally. That Atlantic salmon you're buying, it often comes from Norwegian or Tasmanian farms, gets shipped frozen to processing facilities, thawed, repackaged, and placed on ice to look fresh. Technically legal, but deeply misleading. Customers have reported finding Coles fish with cloudy liquid pooling in the packaging, a telltale sign the fish is breaking down. Others describe opening vacuum-sealed fillets only to be hit with that unmistakable ammonia smell, the chemical signature of decomposition. Coles' response: they point to their quality guarantees and encourage customers to return unsatisfactory products. But that doesn't help when you've already contaminated your fridge, wasted money, or worse, fed spoiled fish to your family. The seafood counter staff at Coles are often undertrained generalists handling multiple departments. Unlike dedicated fishmongers, they're juggling deli, bakery, and seafood simultaneously. One former Sydney store employee revealed that she received exactly 45 minutes of seafood training before being left alone at the counter. She admitted not knowing the difference between fresh and previously frozen, or what safe internal temperatures should be. When customers asked detailed questions about catch locations or handling methods, she'd just point at the labels and hope they'd stop asking. That's not expertise, that's improvisation. And don't get started on Coles' seafood sales tactics. They'll mark down fish nearing its use-by date, slap a reduced sticker on it, and hope budget-conscious shoppers grab it quickly. The problem, that fish was already borderline before the discount. Now it's being sold with even less margin for safe handling. You take it home, refrigerate it overnight, cook it the next day, and wonder why everyone's stomach is churning. It's not bad luck. It's bad fish sold at the worst possible moment. Coles markets sustainability heavily, plastering their packaging with Marine Stewardship Council logos and responsible choice labels. But multiple investigations have shown these certifications are often marketing theatre. One environmental audit found that Coles' imported prawns came from farms in Southeast Asia with questionable antibiotic use and water quality standards. You're paying for peace of mind that doesn't actually exist. Number 4, Woolworths. If Coles is questionable, Woolworths is outright concerning. As Australia's largest supermarket chain, Woolies moves more seafood than anyone else, and that volume comes with serious quality control failures. Health Department inspections across multiple states have repeatedly cited Woolworths stores for inadequate ice coverage on displayed fish. Walk past a Woolworths seafood counter during peak hours, and you'll often see fillets sitting on drainage grates with minimal ice coverage. That's not fresh presentation. That's bacterial incubation. One Melbourne customer photographed barramundi fillets with visible grey patches where the flesh should be pink. When she complained, staff insisted it was natural variation. That discoloration indicates oxidation and the beginning of spoilage. Multiple whistleblowers have reported repackaging protocols that border on fraudulent. Fish approaching its use-by date gets pulled from displays, and if it passes a basic smell test, it's repackaged with a new date. One Brisbane employee described the process. We'd pull the prawns that weren't selling, rinse them with cold water to firm them up, repackage them, and put them back out with a fresh sticker. Rinsing spoiling seafood doesn't reverse bacterial growth. Then there's Woolworths' relationship with imported seafood. Their macro brand sources heavily from Asian fish farms with documented health violations. One investigation traced frozen basa fillets to Vietnamese farms where fish are raised in crowded ponds, treated with antibiotics banned in Australia. Those antibiotics accumulate in the fish flesh. Woolworths also pioneered self-service seafood in some locations. Customers grab pre-packaged fish from refrigerated open cases. Those cases rely on proper temperature maintenance. One food safety expert tested these displays and found inconsistent temperatures, with some sections running as warm as 7 degrees Celsius. Woolworths operates on razor-thin margins. Every day unsold fish sits in the case is lost profit. Internal memos encourage stores to be aggressive with seafood rotation, meaning sell it before the date, even if quality is declining. Woolworths customers have reported food poisoning incidents at rates higher than other chains. The company's standard response is refunds and apologies. But food poisoning isn't an inconvenience, it's a health crisis. Number 3, IGA. Independent Grocers of Australia sounds small, local and trustworthy. The branding emphasises community connection and personal service. But when it comes to seafood, IGA stores operate with wildly inconsistent standards that range from acceptable to absolutely hazardous. Here's the fundamental problem with IGA. They're independently owned franchises with minimal corporate oversight. That means each store sets its own seafood sourcing, handling and display standards. Some IGA stores have excellent relationships with local fishmongers and genuinely fresh products. Others treat the seafood section like an afterthought, sourcing whatever's cheapest from distributors and hoping customers don't notice the difference. One food safety audit of IGA stores across South Australia found that nearly 40% failed basic seafood temperature requirements. Inspectors discovered fish sitting in displays with insufficient ice, refrigerated cases running warm, and staff who couldn't. Answer basic questions about storage times or safe handling. One particular IGA in suburban Adelaide had seafood sitting at 9 degrees Celsius. That's warmer than your home fridge should be. And these are raw prawns and fish fillets meant for immediate consumption. When questioned, the manager claimed the refrigeration unit was broken, but corporate hadn't approved repairs yet. So they just kept selling potentially hazardous seafood and hoped nobody got sick. IGA's lack of centralised standards means you're essentially gambling every time you buy fish there. The store you visited last week might have been fine. The one you visit today might be a bacterial nightmare, and there's no way to know without inspecting the display yourself or risking illness after the fact. Then there's the sourcing question. Many IGA stores rely on third-party distributors for seafood supply. These distributors buy from various suppliers, freeze the products, transport them across vast distances, and deliver to multiple stores. By the time that fish reaches your local IGA, it's been frozen, thawed, transported warm, potentially refrozen, and finally thawed again for display. Each freeze-thaw cycle degrades the texture and creates opportunities for bacterial contamination. You think you're buying fresh local seafood because the IGA label says so. What you're actually getting is frozen import that's been processed multiple times. Former IGA employees have admitted that seafood training is virtually non-existent in many stores. One worker in rural New South Wales said she was handed a pair of gloves and told to stock the fish case with no instruction on temperatures, rotation, or contamination prevention. She admitted using the same utensils for raw fish and cooked prawns without washing them. That's textbook cross-contamination, and it's happening because IGA stores prioritise cost-cutting over proper training. IGA also has a troubling pattern of seafood recalls that never make headlines. Small, independent stores don't face the same media scrutiny as major chains. So when contaminated products are discovered, they quietly pull them from shelves without public announcement. One 2020 recall involved frozen prawns sold at multiple IGA stores that tested positive for listeria. Most customers who bought those prawns never received notification. They only found out if they happened to check the Food Standards website directly. That's not transparency. That's hoping people don't notice. And here's what makes IGA particularly problematic for unsuspecting customers. The independent local branding creates false confidence. People assume small stores have more accountability and care more about quality. Sometimes that's true. Often it's not. IGA stores operate with profit margins even thinner than major chains, which means even more pressure to cut corners on expensive perishables like seafood. One Queensland food safety expert called IGA seafood a lottery. Some stores are genuinely excellent, treating seafood with proper respect and care. Others are disasters waiting to happen, selling fish that should be condemned while smiling and pretending everything's fine. And unless you know exactly which store you're walking into, you're taking a risk every single time. Number 2. Aldi, discount German chain. Aldi has conquered Australia with low prices and no-frills efficiency. Their seafood section reflects that same approach, except when you're cutting costs on fragile perishables like fish, efficiency becomes dangerous. Let's start with Aldi's seafood sourcing model. Unlike other chains that source from multiple suppliers and offer variety, Aldi operates on bulk purchasing agreements with the cheapest possible providers. That means their frozen fish products come from mass-market suppliers across Asia, South America, and occasionally Australia. The catch locations are vague at best. Labels say product of multiple countries or imported, which could mean literally anywhere. One investigation traced Aldi frozen salmon back to farms in Chile with documented water pollution issues. Another found their frozen prawns sourced from Vietnamese operations flagged for illegal antibiotic use. When confronted, Aldi claimed all products meet Australian standards. Meeting minimum standards is not the same as being safe or high quality. Aldi's seafood section consists almost entirely of frozen products with occasional fresh items. But here's the problem. Aldi stores operate with skeleton staff and ultra-fast turnover. Products arrive frozen, get unpacked quickly and hit the shelves with minimal handling. That's fine for canned goods. It's terrible for seafood that requires constant temperature monitoring. Multiple customers have reported buying frozen fish from Aldi that showed signs of partial thawing. The packaging felt soft, ice crystals inside looked refrozen, and upon cooking, the texture was mushy and unpleasant. One Adelaide woman bought Aldi salmon fillets that smelled off immediately upon opening. She returned them and was told they were fine, probably just strong fish smell. Strong fish smell is spoilage. Anyone who knows seafood understands that. But Aldi staff aren't trained to recognise these signs. They're trained to scan barcodes and keep lines moving. Former Aldi employees have revealed that frozen seafood delivery protocols are inconsistent. Trucks arrive with mixed loads, frozen and refrigerated items together. During busy periods, those products sit on loading docks or in back rooms for extended periods before proper storage. One former Sydney worker admitted frozen fish would sometimes sit in the back room for over an hour during unloading. That's enough time for surface thawing to begin, which compromises both texture and safety. When asked about it, management just said, move faster. Moving faster doesn't keep frozen products frozen. Proper cold chain management does, and Aldi's cost-cutting model doesn't prioritise that. Then there's the quality of Aldi's seafood itself. Their frozen fish fillets are often thin, irregular cuts with added water and sodium solutions to bulk up weight. That's why Aldi fish costs less. You're paying for water weight and cheap processing. One nutritional analysis found Aldi fish products contained 15 to 20% added solution, meaning you're buying less actual fish than you think. And those solutions aren't harmless. They often contain sodium tripolyphosphate and other preservatives that give fish an unnatural glossy appearance and help retain moisture during freezing. For people watching sodium intake, those additives can be significant. For anyone expecting pure fish, it's an unwelcome surprise. Aldi also has a disturbing pattern with seafood product recalls. Because their supply chain is so opaque and involves multiple countries, when contaminated products are discovered, tracing the source becomes nearly impossible. In 2021, certain Aldi frozen prawn products were recalled due to potential contamination with undeclared allergens. Customers who bought them weeks earlier had no way of knowing unless they actively checked recall databases. Most people don't, so contaminated products got consumed with no accountability. The biggest issue with Aldi seafood is simply this: you have no idea what you're actually getting. The labels are vague, the sourcing is opaque, the handling is rushed, and the staff aren't trained to identify problems. You're rolling the dice every time, hoping that whatever ends up in your cart is actually safe. For shoppers focused purely on price, Aldi looks appealing. For anyone concerned with food safety, quality, or transparency, it's a red flag factory. Number 1, Drake's Supermarkets. If you're in South Australia, you know Drake's. The locally owned chain has built a reputation on competitive pricing and South Australian pride. But when it comes to seafood, Drake's is hands down the worst offender we investigated. And that's saying something considering the competition. Let's start with documented health violations. Between 2019 and 2023, Drake's stores across Adelaide were cited repeatedly for serious seafood safety failures. Health department reports revealed fish displays with grossly inadequate ice coverage, refrigerated cases running well above safe temperatures, and cross-contamination between raw and cooked products that should never happen. One particularly disturbing inspection at a Drake's location in suburban Adelaide found raw fish stored directly above ready-to-eat salads in a shared refrigerated case. Fish juices were literally dripping onto food meant to be consumed without further cooking. That's not carelessness. That's food safety malpractice. When the inspector issued a violation notice, the store manager argued they'd been doing it that way for years, with no complaints. The absence of complaints doesn't mean absence of illness. It just means people don't connect their food poisoning back to the grocery store. Drake's seafood sourcing is equally problematic. They source heavily from budget distributors offering the lowest possible wholesale prices. That means their fish comes from the same suppliers providing products to fish and chip shops, low-end restaurants and institutional kitchens. Not illegal, but definitely not the quality customers expect when they see fresh seafood prominently displayed. One Drake's whistleblower revealed that expired seafood was routinely repackaged with new dates. Fish that should have been discarded would instead get pulled back, inspected briefly, and if it didn't smell overwhelmingly bad, it got new packaging and a fresh label. The former employee described it as the smell test standard. If it doesn't make you gag immediately, it's still sellable. That's not food safety protocol, that's reckless endangerment. Multiple customers have reported severe food poisoning after consuming Drake's seafood. Online reviews describe projectile vomiting, debilitating stomach cramps, and days of illness. One Adelaide family ended up in emergency care after eating Drake's salmon that smelled fine but was apparently contaminated with pathogenic bacteria. Drake's offered a refund and store credit. That's their standard response. Apologise, refund, and hope it goes away quietly. Then there's the staff competency problem. Drake's operates with minimal staffing and high turnover. Seafood counter workers are often teenagers or casual employees with zero training in proper handling. They don't know safe temperatures, rotation protocols, or contamination prevention. One former worker admitted she'd handle raw fish, then immediately moved to weighing deli meat without, changing gloves. When asked about it, her manager told her not to worry. Just wipe your hands. Wiping doesn't kill bacteria. Proper washing, sanitizing, and glove changes do. But that takes time and costs money. Two things Drake's is determined to minimize. Drake's frozen seafood section is arguably worse than their fresh displays. Products sit in open freezer cases that customers reach into constantly. Every time that door opens, warm air floods in, causing partial thawing of surface products. Drake's doesn't properly rotate stock, so fish products sit for months until someone finally buys them. One customer bought frozen prawns with a use-by date that had been printed over twice, suggesting the product had been relabeled multiple times to extend its shelf life. That's not efficient inventory management, that's fraud. And perhaps most damning, Drake's has shown zero interest in improving their seafood standards despite repeated violations. Other chains respond to health department, citations with staff retraining, equipment upgrades, and policy changes. Drake's just pays the fines and continues operating exactly as before. One South Australian food safety advocate called Drake's seafood section a public health hazard that's somehow still legal. Their prices are low because their standards are lower. The environmental impact of Drake's seafood should also concern shoppers. They source from suppliers with documented overfishing practices and habitat destruction. That barramundi you're buying might come from farms that are literally destroying river ecosystems in Southeast Asia. Drake's doesn't care because caring costs money. And their business model is built entirely on being cheaper than competitors at all costs. The most frustrating thing about Drake's is that South Australians continue shopping there out of regional loyalty. The owner is local, the branding emphasises SA pride, and prices undercut major chains. But that loyalty is misplaced when it comes to seafood. You're paying slightly less to eat fish that's been mishandled, potentially spoiled, and sold with practices that would shut down an independent fishmonger immediately. Now that we've exposed the 5 worst offenders, let's talk about what you can do. Fish is expensive, fragile, and spoils faster than any other protein in the store. It requires constant refrigeration, careful rotation, and knowledgeable staff. And all of that costs money. Grocery chains operate on extremely thin profit margins. Every dollar spent on proper seafood handling is a dollar that doesn't go to shareholders. So compromises get made. Temperatures run slightly warm. Staff training gets skipped. And when problems arise, stores offer refunds and hope customers don't make noise. That piece of fish sitting on ice in the supermarket case could be days old, mishandled, improperly stored, or outright spoiled. And there's often no way to tell just by looking. So what can you do? First, get educated about what proper fish should look like. The flesh should be firm and spring back when pressed. The smell should be ocean fresh, not fishy or ammonia-like. If it smells strong, it's already spoiling. Walk away immediately. Second, ask questions. Where was this fish caught? When did it arrive at the store? Was it previously frozen? If the staff can't answer, you already know the store doesn't prioritize seafood quality. Third, don't let price seduce you. That markdown sticker means the fish is nearing expiration. Even at half price, spoiled fish is a terrible deal. Fourth, check temperatures. Reach into the display case and feel the ice. Is it actually cold or just cool? Proper displays should feel almost painfully cold to the touch. And finally, consider alternatives to supermarket seafood entirely. Find a dedicated fishmonger or fish market where staff actually know what they're selling. Yes, it costs more, but you're paying for expertise, proper handling, and genuinely fresh product. The stores we've exposed today, Coles, Woolworths, IGA, Aldi, and especially Drake's, are gambling with your health every time they put questionable fish on display. They're prioritising profit over safety, convenience over quality, and hoping you don't notice until it's too late. The next time you walk into one of these stores and see that glistening salmon fillet on ice, ask yourself if you truly trust this store to have handled that fish properly from ocean to display case. If the answer is anything less than complete confidence, put it down and walk away. Your family's health is worth more than a convenient dinner option. Some fish should never be sold. Some stores should never be trusted. And the only way to protect yourself is to be skeptical, informed, and willing to say no when something doesn't feel right. So there you have it. 5 Australian grocery stores where the seafood section is more dangerous than most shoppers realise. From temperature violations to contamination cover-ups, from misleading labels to outright fraud, these stores are selling fish that should never reach your plate. The evidence is documented, the violations are real, and the health risks are serious. Your best defence is awareness, scepticism, and the courage to demand better from the stores that want your money. Trust is earned through transparency and consistent quality. These 5 stores have broken that trust repeatedly. Now you know exactly where the problems are and how to protect yourself. If this investigation opened your eyes to what's really happening in Australian seafood sections, make sure to like and subscribe for more exposés on the food industry, secrets they don't want you to know. Thanks for watching, and remember, when it comes to seafood, if it smells fishy, it probably is.